Really what we're going to be talking about today is just some best practices, fields that we find are really valuable to make sure that you fill in, that will then ultimately lead into your reporting. So really excited to chat about that today. So like I've kind of already mentioned, our agenda today, again, we're going to go through how to build out your estimates, how those can actually lead into your printouts, and how you can adjust your printouts to work better for yourself and for your client-facing items. And then, of course, turning those estimates into templates later on as well. You know, a lot of you do a lot of repeatable work, and it's nice to know that it's easy to go back to something and copy it and create templates for yourself. So we'll touch on that briefly today as well. Laura will be answering questions in the chat box on your GoToWebinar control panel. So shoot everything towards her there. It looks like questions are already actually coming in, which is great. So feel free to shoot them over whenever you're ready. Yeah, if there's anything that Laura thinks is a little trickier or would be really valuable for the entire group to see today, we will actually try and address them on screen as well. If there's anything, though, that's maybe more specific to your agency and your team, it might be better if we actually set up a time outside of the webinar. So if for some reason we're not able to accommodate you directly on the webinar today, we will definitely follow up outside of it. So don't hesitate to send those questions through. Learning more with Function Point. So there's lots of extra resources that are available to you. I know that our team is really great at responding and reaching out when you guys need help. But of course, we do also like to sleep sometimes. So if for some reason you're unable to get a hold of us, I will point out to you today where you can actually access all those extra resources and other items that are available to you. We do also have our FP referral program. So if there's anyone that you think would benefit from using Function Point, please send them through. There is an opportunity to win a gift card. So yeah, and you know, we all want to continue growing our Function Point community. So don't hesitate to send through some recommendations. Our next scheduled webinar is actually on scheduling and assigning tasks. That will be on November 15th, and it'll actually be hosted by Jessica Bird, who is also on our success team. We like to switch it up and keep you guys guessing on who's going to be hosting as we go. So that will be an exciting one. You know, this is an area of the system that we've constantly been updating over the last year or so. So there's always some new changes and you know, scheduling and assigning tasks. It really feeds directly from this estimating that we're going to be talking about today, and really how the building of the estimate that we're going to talk today will ultimately feed into building your schedules and tasks later on, if that is the road that you go down. Connect with us on social media. Please visit our FP blog for great content. There's actually going to be a blog that's sent in the follow-up today, along with the recording of the webinar, that just is very basic, just best practices when it comes to estimating, not necessarily on Function Point, but estimating in general. But please connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with all of you. Also, another thing that our marketing team has just told us about recently, we have partnered with GoToCrowd, which is a review site, and anytime you review Function Point on their site, $10 will be donated to the Haiti Relief Fund. So anyone that's still been affected from the earthquake that hit them in 2010. So please feel free to write a review on Function Point, and it's actually going to a good cause. Good or bad, we want to hear your feedback. So please feel free to write a review on GoToCrowd. I believe that link should also be sent in our follow-up email as well. Awesome, but let's dive right into effective estimating. Before I get started, Laura, just checking in, is there anything you feel like I'm missing or any questions that have come through? I do notice that question box has popped up.
No, I think we're all good so far. Thank you.
Okay, awesome, that's great. So diving right in then. So there are a couple of ways that you can create estimates in the system, and I'm going to just do the most basic way today, and that's actually by just coming up here and hovering over the estimates on your main navigation bar and add estimate. Something I do want to point out, though, is that you'll see with the jobs module is, and something I always like to just kind of mention, is that your estimates and jobs are sort of one and the same. You need an estimate to be able to create a job. So you'll see this add job option here on the jobs main navigation bar. However, it will take you to the exact same page as this add estimate because you are required to create an estimate before you can create a job. But I will point out the actual add jobs button when you need to make the change from the estimate into a job later on for you. Now, when you land on the add estimate page, you'll notice that there is some UI changes that have been happening recently in the system, and those UI changes will be slowly trickling into this space as well. So if in the future someone's watching this webinar and you're noticing that it's looking different than your page, the functionality should all still be the same. It's just the look that's a little bit different. You'll notice that the blue lines, those are all required fields, so you will be required to fill them in before you can move forward with adding in your estimate. So let's go ahead and create an estimate today. So our estimate name, best practices, always try and keep your naming conventions similar within your function point system. That'll just help with searching later on. So if you're ever searching for something specific, but it could be related to a number of different companies or any items like that, just keep your terminology similar so that you can easily find things that might be similar and pinpoint those items down. So maybe for today, we're going to do a webinar website build. And it's maybe going to be for October 2017. That date can sometimes be handy. I see some people use it, but not all the time. Actually, yeah, we're going to do it for October 2017. Estimate type. So this list is customizable depending on, again, the agency that you work for, the type of work that you produce. That can all be changed in your list maintenance in the back end of the system. But again, we know that I'm working on a website today, so I'm going to choose website. Again, this just makes it so easy when pulling lists later if you're wanting to see all of your estimates that you created for the year just related to creating websites or other items like that. With the company, we'll need to find a company or the company that we're doing this piece of work for. Again, you can use the little magnifying box and it will pull up a list of all of your companies. I think the list will grow up to 200 different companies for you. But if you know that there is like specific word or anything, you can also partially type in the name and tab out and it will either produce it or produce a smaller list for you. Now with the company, because we already have the AE set up at that company level, as well as the rate category and the terms, it did auto-populate that for me, which is great. However, you still have the ability to change this while you're creating this estimate. Now, if say this is just a special case and you don't want to use those standard items. An item that you'll see here is this estimate contact. So this isn't a required field. However, it is really handy when it comes to invoicing later, as well as, again, just knowing who your main contact is at the Canucks here. Now, you'll see the magnifying glass, again, that will pull up either the list or just automatically fill it in for you on who your main estimate contact is. This will also allow you to be able to email out your estimate PDF directly to Shelly later on if that's what you choose to do. For this one today, I'm actually going to change the AE over to Olivia because she's going to be just handling this project for the Canucks. It's not going to be Mark today. If there's already a project that you have in the system that you want to put this a part of, you can definitely do that. I'm going to leave it blank for myself today. Rate category. So as I'm sure many of you know, you can have multiple rates within the system. Today, we're going to just leave it the standard rate card, but say if the company or your client is looking for a rushed piece of work, they want it done a little faster than normal, and so you're going to charge them a little bit more, you could definitely add in the higher rate or maybe even a discounted rate if you choose. That will just pull the different rate cards for you when you're building out that estimate. And you'll see where that feeds in just a minute. Terms. You can change the terms if they're different. Client PO number, if you happen to have that, you can fill that in. Again, really just as many of these fields as you can fill in are going to benefit you just later on and just make it easier for searching or anything like that. Now, for those of you that participated in our CRM webinar that we held 2 weeks ago, you'll also notice the close probability and the month close. These are really handy when you're prospecting or building out bids for new potential pieces of work, because it just feeds into our some forecasting reports that we have. Now, the one that I really can't stress enough is this delivery date. This is a huge field to take advantage of when it comes to your estimating. What we recommend is actually the delivery date being the date that you expect this work to be completed by. This will feed into job lists as well as into the job once you've turned it into that, which it'll just help you to prioritize which jobs need to be finished quicker by easily pulling lists of jobs based off their delivery dates and knowing which ones were kind of expected to be done around that time, again, for prioritization. So please, please, please fill this in. I can't stress it enough. Anytime I'm looking in a system, if I see delivery dates in there, it's always a beautiful thing to me. So for this, I'm actually going to say we've got till the end of November to complete this website. So it's quite easy for me to be able to do some of those reporting based off of that. Now, the category here is an interesting one. How we have kind of designed it at Function Point is to help you in knowing which way to invoice for this estimate or job. So if it's retainer invoicing, time material, fixed price, it's just an easy way for you to know or to show your accounting team how this job needs to be invoiced for. There could be weeks where or specific days where they invoice for all your time material jobs. So it's easy for them to pull those lists of those jobs and create invoices. So this really is a handy drop down if you choose. However, again, this one is customizable in the list maintenance as well. So if you want to use it for different items, you can definitely do that too. But this is kind of a best practice that we recommend. The office, so that is just your office. Now, if you're a larger agency that has multiple offices in it, go ahead and give this a change. Usually the system will automatically default to whatever office you are specifically assigned to. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. Now, this item here, the work type, some of you, if you're following along in your own system as we go, you might not have this one. This is one that can actually be turned on and off, and I've seen used in multiple different ways. Specifically in this system, I see it used for more like in-house. It's just like another layer on top of that estimate type for, again, searching, reporting, and I will show you in just a minute where you can also pull that from. You'll also notice this blank space here. There are two more fields that you can actually turn on as well. And those will allow you to be able to assign more contacts directly to this estimate or job that you might think one of them specifically is actually creative lead. So if there's a designer that needs to be the head designer for this specific job, you can assign them immediately when creating the estimate, and those will pull through to the job for you as well. So those are actually turned on directly under admin, system setup, and system preferences, and you can turn those on there. So that's also a really handy one to take a peek at. All right, now the final step and the final required step, actually I'm gonna fill these in. This is gonna be time material and digital. Perfect. So the final step is actually selecting those service groups and services that are gonna be required to build out this piece of work. So for today, of course, this is web design. We're building a website, so those are the most straightforward. You can collapse and expand all of these and actually pick and choose which ones you're going to need rather than just picking the entire service group and pulling through all of those services. I know that's something that I've actually run across recently talking to a couple different agencies. They thought they had to choose the entire service group, but that's not the case. You can expand it and pick and choose which services in those service groups you actually want to use for those pieces of work. So I always just kind of like to throw that out there now. But for the web design, we're going to be using all this. And then actually for this, I'm going to pull in some expenses as well, just because I know we're going to need to use a freelancer for some of this, as well as maybe take some photography, some photos to put up on the website. All right, now before I go forward, Laura, I just want to check in. I do still see that you are typing away over there, answering questions. Is there anything you think we should tackle on screen or anything you think I've missed that I should talk about?
No, I think you're doing a great job. One thing I might mention is that some people are pretty excited about those extra fields that you talked about adding in those extra contacts. Just to clarify that they are primarily going to be just people within your own organization. Unfortunately, at this time, you can't choose to add people like vendors to those fields.
Yeah, good point. That is definitely a good point to mention there, Laura. Yeah, so those are only for internal employees that you have. It's super easy though to add in vendors or other contacts directly on the job later on. If we actually have a bit of extra time at the end, maybe I'll try and fit that in as well. Okay, so then whenever you're ready, you would just click submit, and this will now take you to the actual estimate details page. So this is, you'll notice that all the information that you've already filled in has pulled through to here. So we've got the service groups and those services that we chose, but now this is the fun part where you're actually going to start building out those estimates, the rates, the estimate with those hours and rates, and even if you need to just put in some override bulk amounts, you can do that here on this page. Now, something that working with a lot of agencies, everyone kind of just wants to get past this page so that they can get started on the job. But what I really do like to kind of just point out is that if you take the time and actually build out how many hours you'd expect each of these items to take, it's only going to benefit you again in your financial reporting later and allow you to see the comparison between what you had thought was going to be the number of hours it was going to take you to work on some of these items versus how many hours it actually took. So then you can start seeing that profit. And then, of course, that will feed in with the costing as well in your system too. So I really can't stress enough, take the time, build this out. I know that it's definitely a not the most ideal thing to do in your day, having to build out your estimate and trying to figure out how many hours everything's going to take. But if you build that out and you see those changes going down the line, you'll know how to build those estimates later, and it'll actually start getting easier and faster to build those estimates as well. So again, if you're new to Function Point and you're thinking that this is kind of a task that you're not wanting to do right now, I promise it will get easier and you'll have so much more visibility into your finances if you do it. So while I'm just going to go through and just add in some hours here, you know what, actually we're not going to do social media management for this item, so we can actually delete directly on this page as well, or it's SEO. It's really just the actual building and then the maintenance of the website. So coding and testing, maybe for this, we know it's going to be about 25 hours. And you'll see as I'm adding in these hours, it's building it off this rate here and then creating that total for you, which really is handy. And you know, this client, we know that they can be a bit much, so I'm going to put in 20 hours for client management here. Archiving, put in 10, and then the maintenance, we'll expect maybe like 30 hours over the next year or so. So it is slowly just building. For the photography, I know it's going to be about $5,000 for that. And then the freelancer as well. Now, something I do want to point out when it comes to the external expenses is this new item. Well, it's been around for a few months now, but I still am blown away by the changes that we made to allow for it. Is entering the quantity and rate. So for this freelancer, I know that this freelancer is probably going to spend about 30 hours for us at a rate of $175. So that will automatically pull through there for me to be that $5,250 as my cost for this freelancer, or my expected cost. And then we also have these markup options here as well. So with the photography, we already have that 20% markup in there, but for the freelancer, we're gonna override the 0 to do a 15% markup just for this specific one and this specific case. You do have the ability to make those changes here on the estimate. Now, the other field I want to point out is this override column here. So for, say, this web design, you know, I know we expect to take 10 hours at a rate of $100 an hour, so that'll equal $1,000. However, for this specific one, I know that we need to charge them $1,200 for some reason. So that will easily just pull through and override those total amounts for you. So you do have the ability in here to override and create the totals that you actually want to see. But again, still can't stress enough, please fill in those hours so that you do have those hour comparisons later on. All right. Laura, anything that you want to add? Again, I see you typing away there. Any questions coming in for this page?
No, I think you've covered everything really well.
Thanks. I also just like to check in because it allows me to take a sip of water, you know, still fighting this cough. Okay, awesome. All right, so something else I kind of just want to point out here too, and this will feed into kind of some of those scheduling and tasking, so I'm not going to dig too deep into it, just because, again, it will be touched on more in our next webinar, but if you ever want to actually assign specific staff or roles to these items that will help with just becoming more accurate with those rates, you can do that directly in here as well. So with this web design, if I know that I'm going to be having Leanne work on this, it will pull through her specific rate relating to web design. Now, in this case, her rate is actually the exact same as the standard rate, but there could be times where you're working with like junior or senior designers that would have different rates. A junior designer might have 125 as their bill out rate, where a senior one could have 175, and you would see that change happening there. Now, where it feeds in is that then when you create that ad schedule, it will automatically know to create that task of web design for Leanne Townsend. So that's just kind of a fun little teaser, I guess you could say, for future items. But yeah, if you really want to dig in and see like who and what role are specifically going to be working on what and really get detailed in your estimate, you have that ability in here to continue adding. I'm going to delete that now just to keep this estimate simple. But something else I also just want to point out is along the main service group line here. Again, if you see the plus buttons, it will add in a specific service for you too. So, you know, you're going through this and you're like, I deleted out that SEO, but now I actually think I will have to work on that. You can come in here and it will give you a list of all of your internal services, your internal expenses, and your external expenses. I know that when you're adding the original estimate, you have, it's been grouped already for you by those specific service groups. But when you're on this page, you do have the ability to kind of add in those one-offs. If, say, for this special case, you know, you're going to need to use editing as an external expense, but you don't necessarily want that to live underneath your expenses service group. You can have that live underneath the web design service group as well. So you do have those options of being able to easily add in different items directly from that main service group line. Okay, then whenever you're ready, you can click Save. And now this is going to feed into our printing options now. So I'm not, of course, everyone has different views into the printing. And you can customize them in the back end of the system. Something I always kind of just like to point out is that with these different levels, so the service group as well as the individual services, you can actually print based off of those items, and that's where you can make those changes. So the couple of printouts that I just made sure I built out ahead of time here for you is our simple estimate. So this is going to just print out based off of the service group levels. So if we're sending this off to the Canucks, they know that for web design specifically, it's going to have a cost of $10,000, and then the expenses related to this as well are going to be $12,037.50, with the grand total being $22,037.50 for this piece of work coming down the line. Now, you know, there are individuals that maybe don't want to see expenses on here. If you want, you can actually override this expenses title to be something else. If you need. So maybe in this case, web design, maybe we'll change this to like the web development, since our freelancer is actually going to be a developer that's going to be helping work on this. So if we go ahead and save that, you will now see on this printout the change in the title. So we've got our web design and then the web development as our two items broken out there for this estimate. Now, there are also agencies that want to show it at a more granular level. So the actual services that are living underneath these service groups. And that is just a different one. Again, it's actually the same printout. It's just the way it's been designed in the back end. So if there's any questions around that, maybe not directly on this webinar today, but we do have lots of resources that can help walk you through that and make those changes. So you'll now see on this printout that we've got our web design, and then we actually have all the individual services underneath that. Now we do just have the overall cost here for you. If you did want the individual cost broken out by those services, you do also have that option as well. However, I don't see that frequently used. Sometimes the more information you give your clients, the more questions they have, of course. So you have that ability of showing or not showing what you choose. Alrighty, and then the last item that I just want to kind of point out is this notify client. You do have the ability of actually sending out this estimate directly from your system. And you'll notice as we've put this in here, we can send this out because we put Shelly as our contact at the Canucks before getting started today. So you'll see that this will send an email to the estimate contact, shellystar@canucks.ca, where you also have the ability to pick that specific printout you want to show. You can change the content, and you can send that directly to her. Just to note, this will come from a noreply@functionpoint.com email address, just so everyone is aware of that. All right, Laura, just checking in again. Next sort of thing we're going to dive into is actually being able to view costs related to your estimates, but I just wanted to check in before I feed into that now.
No, I think we're all good. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. So something that I'm sure if any of you have ever actually spoken to me before, that I again really can't stress enough being a benefit in the system is entering your costs into the system. And there's two different types of costs in the system. There is a cost rate card, which is actually your blended cost rate that you as a company would hold, and with that is a formula that we recommend that would include your staff salary at an hourly rate, as a blended staff salary at an hourly rate, including as well as a percentage of your overhead, just so you can take that into an account. And then, of course, there's your actual cost. So that would be specific to your staff and their hourly salary. And again, of course, that percentage of your overhead, so you can take that into account. What I want to talk about today is that blended rate, because that is what feeds into your estimate. And that is the only time that blended cost rate card will be used is on your estimate. And the best way of being able to see that is right now you'll see that on this estimate, we're in edit mode. If we go out of the edit mode, just by clicking view services here, you'll now see that there is this cost column. So based off of those quantities and that rate that we entered in, and then that total with the comparison based off of the cost rate card that we have built in the system, we're expected the cost to us as an agency to be $450, but still billing out to our client $1,500 for this item. So it just kind of gives you that view into what potentially your cost could be. Now that is actually built out in the back end of our system. So for those of you that are familiar with back here, you would come to admin, rate and staff management, and rate categories. And this is where you would build out any or all of your different rates that you have in the system. Earlier, if you all remember that drop down that we looked at, we had the client standard rate, the higher rate, and that discount rate to be able to choose from. But now you'll see this cost rate. And this has just been activated to be the cost rate. So this isn't a rate that you can actually choose when creating estimates. It will just automatically kind of be working in the background as you're creating estimates, which is pretty handy. And then, of course, that then will feed into our service rates and markups, where you then will actually be able to see that cost rate card and what that blended cost rate is. So for us, our blended cost rate is actually $30 an hour, and you can still see that in comparison to what your higher rate is versus your discount rate and your client standard rate. And then this will automatically pull through to that estimate that we have built on those services, and being able to view those costs related to this piece of work. Again, just stressing it's potential costs. There is, of course, the actual costs, which would be based off of your actual time materials, so any timesheets or expenses that are entered into the system and applied to the job later on. And again, this will pull through to all of your reporting. Please, and also just for some of the owners or supervisors that are out there, we do have the ability to turn off this view in the permissions, just for maybe some of the end users that don't need to be able to see the cost to your agency. So that's just something I also like to kind of just mention, so that you're not worried, oh, well, I don't want to enter those in because I don't want everyone to know what everyone's salaries are. We do have the ability of turning that off. Now, of course, this does also feed into the view costs, billable, and margins. So if you have those costs in there, it will help you with these different items. It will break it out by the internal services, internal expenses, and external expenses that you have living on there. So again, we're expecting there to be a $3,000 cost for our internal services. The billable, that $10,000 of what that billable amount is that we expect. So that is giving us a $7,000 margin between that billable and that cost for you. So just a really kind of quick, nice overview there for you if you're ever wanting to see those, again, potential cost versus billable options. All right, Laura, just checking in again. Any questions related to that? I know that this can sometimes be a topic you're also pretty passionate about as well. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you've covered most of it. One thing I would say is that just the cost column here is permission-based. So if that isn't something you're able to see, you would want to talk to your system administrator.
Yes. And unfortunately, myself or Laura, we are not allowed to turn on your permissions for you. You will have to talk to your system administrator. That's just something I also like to point out. Yeah, we're not allowed to, so make sure you talk to someone at your agency if you're wanting to be able to view it. Okay, cool. So those are really big couple items. Now, the last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on today, and actually we're making really great time, so we probably won't take up the whole hour today unless you guys start throwing some crazy questions at me, which of course are welcome, is in regards to copying or templating your pieces of work. Again, if you have a lot of repeatable work and you know that always this is going to be this is going to be how you're always going to do your websites. This is always the services that you're going to use. You do have the ability of copying and templating your estimates in the system. And you'll see this copy estimate just right up here in your top right-hand corner. So if you did choose that, this website build, this is exactly how I'm always going to want it, you can copy this. And also a fun thing too is if you came back and copied, you can actually copy from actuals as well. So you'll be able to see based off of the hours that were applied to the job and pull those through. And I'll show you that in just a second. So if we copy this estimate, it will copy it all just identically. We've got this website, the webinar website build October 2017. So probably with the naming convention, you'll want to get rid of this October 2017 just because it could be a couple of years from now, not in October, and that's not the terminology that you're going to want in there. Something else, if we're saving this as a template, we do recommend actually saving it underneath your company's name rather than your client's name, just because then this template would be saved to them, where it would be easier to search for all templates based off of yourself. So for here, it would be function. We'll tab out and it'll automatically produce function point here. You will again have to keep that AE there with the rate and terms. But what I'm going to do is actually clear out that delivery date, even though I know that that is a big piece that I always like to stress. But since this is a template, it's more important when it comes to actual pieces of work. But the piece that we really want to take a look at is the quantities from. So this is where we want to pull the hours and the quantities. Just click submit. Oh, and of course, I had a bit of a bonehead move there. There was one thing that I meant to do, and that's actually just to change the title of this estimate to include the word template in the title. So on that previous page, in the estimate name, include the name template. Again, it'll just make it easier to search for later on, and I'll show you that in just a second as well. But just at any point, if you ever need to make changes to these simple items, just underneath the basic info and click edit, you can make those changes later on as well if you forget, like I did. So now we already have our template in here. Again, if you needed to make any changes to those services, you could for future estimates. But it's always good to just maybe keep this as, you know what, actually I've been working with an agency recently as your utopian estimate or the estimate that you would most likely want to see. But then anytime you would want to come in here and copy this again. So you can make those changes depending on who you're working with. Now, if you're ever wanting to actually search or find all of your templates so that you can copy it and start using it for another agency or client that you have, you would just come up here to estimates, find estimates. And then the reason we put that template in the name is because it makes it really easy to just type in template, find estimates, and it will pull up all of those templates that you have living in your system for you. So you'll now see the webinar website build template here that we just created. You could click into that, and we know we're going to do a new webinar website build for someone else. You could come in here, copy that estimate again, and go through that those same steps. So we know that this one's actually going to be for November 2017, and the new agency, the new client is actually going to be Coca-Cola for this, and they're going to expect it to be done by the end of January. So now again, it's just pulling everything in here for us, pulling it through. We've got everything already living here, and yeah, you can just save that, print that off, and send it off. So again, if there's anything that anyone can walk away with today is please enter in those delivery dates, making sure you're putting in those hours and totals for your estimates. It's only going to make your life easier, and that you can easily create templates for yourself. Oh, and of course, entering in those costs. So yeah, those are really my main takeaways today. Again, Laura, just checking in with you. Were there any questions, concerns, anything that you think I should touch on screen before we actually give people back some of their time today?
No, I think it's been great. I guess one item that's come in, I think people are really excited about some of those custom fields, but with work type, could you give an example of a report that they could run based on that?
Yeah, for sure. So probably one of the best ways of actually utilizing that work type is, again, just through these finds. And those can be done through the estimate find. So you'll actually see work type here is an option. So if you're wanting to come in here and maybe just search for all of our estimates that have a work type of print, you can fill that in and either find active or find estimate. You'll have to excuse me because I wasn't prepared for this. I don't know what my demo system's going to pull up. Okay, but it's actually not too bad. So we have that all in here. We'd be able to see it. Now, something that I always like to show when it comes to our reporting is this manage columns option up here. So with here, you can add in that work type as a column option right here, and you can position that as you would want. Maybe I'll put it next to I'll put it next to the actual estimate type so that we can see and compare those and save those columns. And you'll now see that this is all of our estimates that have a work type of print living in the system. You can also do that on the job finds page. These are some of my favorite reports. 9 times out of 10, whenever someone's looking for a specific report, I can usually build it in one of these areas. So yeah, this would probably be one of the best options. Laura, is there anything else that you would maybe suggest as well? Or like, I know this is definitely a top one, but.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right that that's probably the most powerful area to use it. I do believe I've had a couple of people find it useful. Also, it's an option to narrow down in the advanced options on the estimate, actual, and invoice dollars report. So if you're looking for more of a quick pre-build option, that is one in the system as well.
That is a good one. Okay, we're not going to dive too much into it, but I'm going to show everyone where that one lives. So under reports and analyze, and it's this estimate, actual, and invoice dollar by company, project, and job. And if you do click into that, You'll have to excuse us. In Vancouver, we've had some crazy wind, and I'm wondering now if our Wi-Fi is starting to be affected by that because it's not letting me click on this right now. Oh, no, here we go. So you will see that work type option here with all those different work types to be able to filter by that. And that will pull through as an Excel or CSV document for you. So yeah, you can easily filter those options as well. I'm not really, okay, my computer, oh, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. Having a slight glitchy moment. All right, cool. So those are the main items that I wanted to review today. Just to close us off, as I had mentioned before, some of those additional resources that are available to you during our out of office time, they're all available to you through this information icon up here in the top right-hand corner. We do have our training site that has all of our training documentation. This will include step-by-step guides as well as some training videos. Please note we have been changing again our UI, so you might notice that some of the documentation doesn't quite match up what's directly in your system, but the functionality should all be the same. We are working but those are all available. What you'll want to check out mostly is probably the library mothership of how-tos. That is really where a lot of it lives, and it's great resources there for you. Other items, of course, are webinars. We do record all of our webinars. You will be getting that recording in our follow-up email today, but everything is still available to you on our webinars page. If you're wanting to see what's new, anything that we've released, we do try and create documentation on that as well for you. If you want to contact support or submit an idea to our product team, this is also here as well. So take a look at some of those resources. Yeah, now again, we are holding our next webinar 2 weeks from now. It's going to be actually an open office webinar that's being held in 2 weeks. So that is actually meant for some of our newer users. It's going to be basic navigation of the system as well as time tracking. So if you have anyone new that's just joined your agency and you want to send them to that to check it out, please send them my way. It's going to be very basic. But then, of course, we have scheduling and tasking on November 15th as well. So please take a look at that and come join us. Yeah, so we're hitting a quarter to 11 here Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to close this out. However, I'm going to send out one more poll. I'm just curious on if you guys found this webinar useful. You know, we're still planning out for our next round of webinars what kind of topics we want to talk about. So any feedback, would love to hear it. If you found it useful, if you didn't find it useful, let us know. Or if you have any topics you want to see us talk about in the future again, please send us an email at success@functionpoint.com. I want to hear those suggestions. So awesome. Thank you, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, Laura, for joining me as well. It was great having you.
Thanks for having me.